Okay.
Recording in progress.
There is an echo. Thank Brother Jahi, thank you. All right, peace. Good evening, everyone. My name is Blain Snipstal, and I go by he, him pronouns. And thank you all for joining us this evening. This is the first of a two-part series offered by SAAFON on all things wonderful pertaining to the land. I just want to say before we get into it, I'm recovering from a cold flu thing that I got from my daughter, so please excuse me if I am a tad slow or off this evening. But outside of that, I'm extremely excited to be here with you all. It's my first time having the opportunity to be a moderator in the virtual world, in the meta space. So this is a new experience. So thank you all for allowing me to be on this first time trip with you all. And I'm just overjoyed to have the opportunity to share space with everyone on the call, but in particular, these 3 or 4 lovely people who are going to share just a glimpse of their awesomeness. And before they introduce themselves, give us a brief intro, there's a few quotes that I just wanted to share to lift up, to sort of encapsulate the space this evening. And the first one is by Gloria Richardson, which is a well-known SNCC organizer, actually originally from Maryland, not too far from the birthplace of Araminta Ross or Harriet Tubman. And this is actually one of my favorite quotes around. And she says that what we realized during the SNCC movement was that if our liberation is not tied to the work we are doing, then it is not liberation at all. And I can't think of a better quote to uplift when we're talking about land and restorative strategies that we'll discuss in this call than that one. The second one is from our dear and beloved Baba Owusu. And he often says that the only thing new underneath the sun is the history you do not know. And I think by these 4 folks who are going to share a bit about their story and their perspectives this evening, I think we're all going to get a glimpse of some histories or herstories that we don't know and will all be enriched by. So akin to traditional Southern culture, I'm going to have to let our elder go first. Miss Mama Earcine, if you could briefly as you would like to be, share a bit about yourself and a bit about how you got into this work, and then we'll transition on to Miss Tianna and Noah.
Well, I'm Earcine Evans. I'm a 4th generation farmer. I grew up on the land where I stood. I really love to think of it as stewing the land rather than owning anything. I don't really believe that we own the land. I believe the land owns us. And I moved back home 17 years ago to steward this land. And it was the best decision I could have made. And one of the biggest reasons I moved back is I started a personal line of natural hair and skincare products because I was so determined to create natural products so people can stop using chemicals on their hair or their skin. I came out of the beauty industry where I spent 10 years and I almost lost my life to chemical poison. I thought about growing up on the land, how my grandmother taught me to use herbal medicine and to use natural products on my body and to eat natural food. I knew that I had to come back to that. And now I want to train, teach, inspire as many young people as possible who want to be on the land to come back to be on the land.
Thank you. And what about your grandson next to you?
My grandson, Nathan, planned to come back to the land and continue the legacy here. And I'm so proud of him. So he's visiting here for 7 days, working with my husband on some equipment that we create called the field broadcaster for farming. So I am so proud of him for being here with us. And I'm so proud of him for having the same vision that I do. So I think it's so super important for us, as elders to set the example, to be there for, our offsprings, because We're the one who needs to be setting the example for them to come back. If we don't create something for them to come back to, then they don't have anything to come back to. A lot of the land where I live, a lot of young people are in the cities and their land is just sitting here. So my goal would be to inspire them when they come to visit so they can see what I'm doing here in Pickett, Mississippi, and they would be inspired to come back home to live on their land.
Beautiful. All right, Miss Tianna.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Tianna Neal. I'm a farmer down here in Georgia, Augusta, Georgia. Well, the Augusta, Georgia area. I kind of got into farming maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. I'm a first generation farmer, so I did not grow up on the land. I didn't have that opportunity. So now I'm all into it. It's something that I really value, the sustainability of the land and natural resources, and also feeding people. One value of mine is to grow, to feed people. I strongly believe in the connection between food and people and land. And I've just kind of been exploring the whole realm of agriculture in these past few years. And I'm currently working with NRCS, meeting other farmers and exploring what they're doing with their properties and their land. And it's really exposing me to a lot of information that wasn't in my peripheral before. So I'm continuing to expand my business, want to continue to see where it takes me, and just continue to see where the land brings me. I'm realizing so many needs when it comes to agriculture, and such as like education and the lack of education available for beginning farmers and new farmers, especially for Black farmers. And so just different things that have been inspiring my work. And I'm going to continue to immerse myself in this field and do what I can for my people and my community.
Beautiful. Before I pass it to Noah to introduce himself, I just wanted to reflect on something that you just said, Tianna, first generation farmer. I remember when I got into agriculture, maybe 10 or about 12 years ago, that's often how I thought about myself and thought about my place in agriculture as a first generation. I called my aunt one day and she said, "Oh, what are you doing this summer?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm farming." And she just goes, "Oh, that's so unusual. That's why we left the South." And that really struck me at that time, because my family originally left the South in 1908 during the main part of the Great Migration. But after traveling and meeting a few folks, I began to realize that actually the concept of a first-time farmer is apt in our current context of the diminishing base of Black farmers and farmers in general. But within sort of the kaleidoscope of sort of the Black agricultural legacy, we started to refer to ourselves as returning generation farmers. That ancestrally, we were brought here because of the agrarian genius that we had, amongst other things, and that there was a rupture that happened, in part due to slavery, in part due to the state. But that rupture doesn't mean that there is nothing that came before and there's nothing that's going to come after. And for us, we started thinking that being returning generation farmers is in both reaching back to our ancestry and to the ancestors that have literally toiled the land, but also opening the doors to the pathways forward. And so I just sort of want to add that yes, we are, beginning farmers or first-time farmers, but sort of in this millennial life of living on this earth, we're part of a long story and genius. So just wanted to add that asterisk to your lovely introduction. So Noah.
Thank you, Blain. And thank you, Miss Earcine, Nathan, and Tianna. Yeah, my name is Noah McDonald. He, him, they, them pronouns. I am currently in Massachusetts right now. I think I don't know how to introduce myself. I'm kind of I always think about myself as a little bit of an in-betweener. So as it pertains to farming and land work, I kind of don't fit into, I don't have in my lineage, like on my father's side, we're not exactly, my family's been farming like up until my grandmother, until the early 1970s in Central North Carolina, since at least the 1760s. So about 200 years of uninterrupted agricultural work. And the break has been very recent, just with my father, my father's siblings. And my parents raised me in rural Central Ohio, and kind of like baptized me, so to speak, in the land. Yeah, I had a lot of formative experiences as a child, working with neighboring farmers and being able to like live a life outside as a child. And it has really, for me in my adult life, I've felt like it's been a return. I've always felt kind of out of place and not really sure what I'm gonna do with my life and how to honor my family and my ancestors, and also to create a good life for my children. And I've just found that land work and farming specifically is a way to do that, a way to honor my family, a way to honor the land, and a way to honor my children and descendants. So that's how I introduce myself. It's good to be here with y'all.
Thank you, Noah. Oh, the land. It's interesting that they don't make no more land. This is all we got. Where we're standing, where we were earlier today, where we're going to be tomorrow. So in a sense, we're all sort of headed towards the same destination, which is the land, whether buried in it or eaten from it. One of the core pieces of this, agrarian revival, you might say, or agrarian renaissance that's happened amongst Black folks or African Americans across the country, but particularly in the Black Belt South. It's really centered around cultural strategies, the ways in which our culture uplifts our inherent dignity and beauty, and then how those cultural practices and ideas and values allow people to actually retain the land, secure the land, save the land, work on the land. So I'm curious from each of you all, and again, starting with Ms. Earcine, in your perspective, how have you, and what are some ideas or examples you can share that Black folks can use cultural strategies in retaining access to land, or retaining family land, or gaining access to land?
I think it's real important for instance, for me with my family. I was the first one, I'm the first grandchild in my family, and I was the first to come back home, to the land. Since I came back home, at least 5 or 6 of my family members are back home. Now, all of them are not farming, but one of my aunts, she grows a huge garden. Someone has to open that door, and I'm glad I did, encouraging people not to be afraid to come back to the land. Because once someone opened that door for you, then other people will follow. Other people definitely will follow. So someone have to be brave enough to make that first move to come back to the land. And I'm glad I was that person that did that. And I see the results. That's because I came back. I have at least other 5 family members that's here. One of them is real serious about her garden. I mean, her garden is bigger than my garden. She's like my grandmother a lot. She just plant a lot of food. She feed her family. She feed everybody in her congregation. You know, I see people coming by to get food from her place all the time. She just loved to grow food. And I believe if I had not came back home that she wouldn't have came. You know, and so I'm glad I did. I see the results of me coming home. I see the results of people in my family that are getting interested. I see the result of my children becoming more involved. I see the result of my grandson who's here with me now because of what I did, of opening that door for him to come back. And I believe that's whoever's interested need to be the person that make that first move to do it, to come home or, you know, to care and steward the land. Someone have to steward the land. Our land was just laying dormant after my grandfather died for like maybe 15 years. And I remember when I first came back, it just felt very lonely and sad. Land need people to live on it and need people to care for it. And once you do that, energetically, other people come and they see that. And then they want to be there on that land. So just getting more people interested in stewarding the land and being there and being that example for other people to see. For me, that's real important. And when I came back, seeing the people that was here, you know, the older farmers, being able to go out and talk with them and let them know that I really did want to be here and want to live on the land and I wanted to farm and that I needed their help too, you know, in farming. That was very helpful to me, is becoming part of the community and really getting to know people around me that had never left the land. And all of them was not, you know, farming the way I was farming, but not making them feel like I was bringing something new to them, because traditionally, people really know how to take care of the land and have been living on it. They understand how to do it. And just bringing in some method that could help them to be better at it, or showing them some method that would help them. That was very helpful for me and my community, you know.
Well, I must say that I've known Miss Earcine, I can't remember how long now. I think the very first time I had the opportunity to walk the land with you, you taught me a number of things. One of the things, all culturally speaking, we were walking around and you just had a cup of hot water. Nothing was in that cup, just the hot water. And as we were walking and talking, and you would say something, you'd say, "Hold on a second, sweetie," and you'd bend over and you'd pick a flower off the ground, any kind of flower you saw. After about 10 minutes of you doing that, I finally got enough courage to ask you, "Why are you doing that?" And what you said was that that's how you acclimated to the transitions of the seasons. That as the flowers bloomed, you would go out and you'd make your tea. And that's how you were communicating with nature. And that really has stuck with me, as you can see since then. And I really am struck by this phrase that you just had to say, which is, we all have to come home. Yeah. This idea that the home is this place that we will forever return to. And that, in your words, the hope is that we can return to it with intention and with value versus returning to it as we transition to the ancestral plane. So thank you for sharing that. And I'll pass it over to Miss Tianna to give us her wisdom and her perspective on how do Black folks retain land through cultural strategies.
I believe it's vital for us to be connecting with those who have already had experience with the land. There's so many like aspiring and younger farmers trying to get into this work, or feeling drawn to this work and feeling drawn to the land, but don't really know like how to get out there and get into that. And so I strongly believe in intergenerational support. From my personal experience, I've been able to work with a few elder farmers who have grown up farming, who operate and own beautiful organic farms. And they took me under their wing. They provided me access for land to grow on. they are there every time I call them with so many questions. And to be honest, I don't know if I would come as far as I have come without that support. And so I strongly believe in building those relationships and working the land, walking the land with these people, learning from them, because what they know isn't just in their operation. It's not just like, oh, I only know about how to produce food under this business. Like this is embedded in them, like since birth, this knowledge, this ancient knowledge. And I feel like if I did not have those people in my life, I feel like I wouldn't have access to this like hidden information. I mean, I'm sure some ways in some time in my life, I'll unlock some pieces here and there, but working alongside them has just allowed so much truth to come up. And when we talk about the culture, the African-American agricultural culture, it's not something that you can like just read about and understand. It's about actually having these conversations with these elders and learning from their experiences growing up on the land. And they don't just speak on their experiences, they'll speak on their parents' experiences and their parents' experiences. It's information that empowers me and me moving forward, and me in my efforts and my dreams to, obtain land of my own and raise a family of my own on the land. These stories is what empowers me. And I feel like it also encourages me to want to, live off the land and obtain land. Me seeing how possible it is, them being the example for me is just like so uplifting. It's my foundation almost. And so I really strongly believe in building and sustaining those intergenerational relationships. I think that's really gonna be vital in the Black Americans' attempts and dreams to retain land and keep land and maintain land.
Thank you. That reminds me, there's an elder up here in Maryland named Baba Odundo. And he has this phrase that there is no culture without agriculture. There is no culture without agriculture. When you look at the word agriculture, the majority of that word is culture. And there's another thing that you were saying, Tianna, that really struck to me, that I often will just call farmer love. It's a different kind of love. There's like your partner love, there's the love for like food, and then there's farmer love. And farmer love is exactly what you were just describing. It's this really innate understanding of who they are in the context of their family, their culture, as it relates to the land. It's not an understanding, as you said, that you can get from a book, no matter how many books you're gonna read. Only way you can get it is to listen. And God gave us 2 ears and a heart. So we're really designed to be listening more than we are to be talking. And this is really core to SAAFON in general, and in particular to this particular two-part series, to highlight the ways in which we relate to each other around land, and in the context of this particular meeting or Zoom hangout around land strategies. So I'll pass it over to you, Mr. Noah, to bring us home on this first question.
Thank you. Wow, I'm really absorbing a lot right now. I just don't think we get to do this enough. Every time I feel like I'm part of such a stellar group right now. I'm just learning so much. Yeah, well, a lot was brought up for me. I think, I guess I didn't really say what my role at SAAFON was. So my role at SAAFON is the research and land work coordinator. And as part of that, I had the opportunity to kind of discern what SAAFON can do as an organization to address what people term as like land loss, but actually more broadly how to cultivate and nurture this like a Black Agrarian Revival. It's a better way of articulating it. And, you know, I got a lot of book sense. So I read a lot of books, but I got to do two things at once. I got to read a lot of books, and I also got to interview our legacy members in SAAFON. And I got to interview, that's actually where I met Miss Earcine for the first time. We had a beautiful interview. And those interviews just absolutely changed my life. And basically, I was able to see that behind each interviewee, each of these members was an elder who spirited them into the role of stewarding their family land. It was this really profound commonality that I saw with each farmer, and many of them spoke, as you were saying, Tianna, like spoke about, oh, this is what my daddy did, or this is what my grandmother did, or this is, you know, what my grandmother's grandmother did. It was so beautiful to see these twin cultural strategies that grandparents did, such as founding like farmer cooperatives and founding like land buying clubs. And there was still this understanding and memory and holding a family history going back to after emancipation that people talk about in books, but it's all there within the memory of family. And for me, like, that was a profound understanding that, like, no matter what legal or like economic strategies that we're doing to access the land, buy the land, keep the land, that it's all built on a foundation of culture, and how we choose, like the decisions we make is based on that culture and like what our family teaches us. So I'm really just coming away with that, like our culture is really the foundation. Like that's what informs like what kind of farm we're going to run, like what kind of, like if we're going to form a business entity, what and why, like how we're going to serve community and why. Like it's like the wellspring from which life comes, I guess. That's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Noah. A few years ago, we had within SAAFON, we had an exchange with ZIMSOF, which is the smallholder farm organization of Zimbabwe. And we had a few farmers, one of their national coordinators, come over and meet a few farmers within the network. And they had a very interesting Afro-Indigenous worldview on the consciousness of the farmer. And in their worldview, the farmer exists between the three realms. The first realm is the spirit realm, where the ancestral plane exists. The second realm is the human realm, where society, cars, buildings, all our human stuff exists. And then that third realm is the natural realm, where the flora and fauna, the dirt, the soil organisms, the sea, the air, the mountains, where all that exists. And the farmer exists in a very unique place at the nexus of those three realms. And the knowledge that's required is quite unique compared to other roles that you might find in one's given community. And so hearing your story, Noah, about, you're kind of in the in-between, well, that actually puts you in the right position to be in this in-between those three realms that Nelson and Zingwa offered up a few years back. Each of you have mentioned sort of the intergenerational aspect of the work that you're doing. And sort of couched within that, it's both learning, listening, and unlearning. And I'm curious, take a little slight deviation here. What are some of the things that you had to unlearn in order to learn about what you're doing and to really step into your farm businesses or your journey in agriculture? So what are those things that you had to unlearn? Because we all come from this society, from this capitalistic, patriarchal, white supremacist society. And so we could show up on the land, we could show up with our elders with that lexicon, with that worldview, and it's going to end in exploitation and oppression, because that's what it produces. So there's a level of learning how to unlearn in order to participate in intergenerational exchanges. And so starting with you, Mama Earcine, if you could just share a bit about some of those things that you've had to unlearn along your journey, and maybe that can give us all a glimpse to things that we could consider.
I love this part, not to treat the land like a cash cow, like to nurture and take care of the land, but not to treat the land like the land owe you something, or, use the land just to create money, but use the land to create wealth. To me, there's a difference between commercial money and farming as a spiritual farmer, to nurture and take care of the land and let the land nurture and take care of me. I had to really get rid of running it like I ran my beauty salon, right? Not to, because when I ran my beauty salon, it was capitalism. So when I came to the farm, I had to unlearn all those ways. I had to learn to totally use my heart at all times, and to think about the land and not to think about how much money I was going to make off of it, or how much money I was going to make off the plants, or I need the plants for this, but to really think about the plants, think about the land, and just unlearn how not to be a capitalist pig, I would say. That for me, I had to unlearn that. I had to really value the land for the land taking care of me, and in return, the land supporting me enough that I don't have to think about it as a cash cow, like I had to create money from it, but just to love the land first and respect it and take care of it. That was the biggest thing for me. And to use my heart with whatever I did, not to go into my head on it, but to use my heart to do it. That was the biggest thing for me.
Thank you. Now, Miss Tianna, that's a little bit of a, it might be a slight contradiction, because you're not coming from a previous career running a hair salon, I suspect, and maybe you're coming from it from a few years in the workforce or what have you. And so to you, what are some of those things that you found that you've had to unlearn in your process of developing your farm business and connecting with folks in your community?
I've been over here trying to think about things like what I've unlearned in relation to the land, but I keep coming back to what I had to unlearn about food. And so I'm gonna talk about food. And when I grew up, like I didn't have much exposure to the land. I ain't never been on a farm until I was like an adult. I didn't know how food grew, it was just stuff from the grocery store, and that's what I was familiar with. I had nothing beyond the grocery store. And so when I started learning how food was produced, everything that I thought I knew about food, it just failed to exist. And then when I thought that I thought the food we was eating was enough. I thought it was sufficient. I thought it was, of quality, because that's all I knew. But then I started to see food being grown organically, real food. I was starting to eat sugar snap peas straight off the vine, just a whole new relation of food. And what I was forced to unlearn there was like that everything I thought I knew wasn't the right way, and that there's still communities that are like deprived of like real food. And I think that is kind of like what really pushed me too, is knowing that there's communities in need of a fresh source of real food and organic, locally produced food. And so that's just one thing that I feel like I've had to unlearn, is what real food is.
No, I feel that. Thank you for sharing that. I hated spinach. I really hated spinach for a long time. I grew up on block spinach. I don't know if anyone's grown up on block spinach. Back in the G, you had the frozen blocks, you get out the freezer. Man, I never wanted to see spinach again. And I didn't actually eat spinach till the first time until I was working on a farm, and I didn't know what it was. I was eating it, but someone had to convince me that it was spinach. And so, you mentioned your sugar snap peas, but my sugar snap peas are spinach, And I just wanted to ask you a follow-up question, because I got the hint of justice in what you were sharing. And it sounds like your experience with reconnecting with food gave you a stronger sense of justice. If you could speak to a little bit about that.
Yeah, it gave me something to fight for almost. It forced me to see the inequalities. It forced me to see that, we've been deprived of something real. And at the same time, like, I'll go to the market and there's so many people, and it's mostly like Black elders that get excited about certain things, and it's because they see it, and it brings them back to like when, okay, let me get a step, like purple whole peas or peas in general. I feel like it's almost like it brings them back to this like state where, most of the food they was eating was like from some farms, from some neighboring farms, and just in the community. And so it's really exciting to also just like bring it back into the community, things that, we kind of just keep like getting away from us, further and further away from us. And I'm just like, purple whole peas, and it just, it's very empowering for me.
Yeah. That reminds me that in the context of justice, within the context of our system of agriculture, a while back, from another visit that I had, spending time with farmers from Brazil, they had a very acute way of understanding the broad global system of agriculture. And they described it as humanity is in between the battle of two models of agriculture. The plantation model of agriculture that's been around since Columbus got lost, and the small scale model of agroecology and sustainable agriculture, which is the model that you three are talking about. Humanity is caught in the middle there. We are the predominant and longest standing model of agriculture with no support from the state. And the conventional plantation model of agriculture has all the support from the state, but still yet is unable to feed the world or feed people nutritious products. And that boils itself down to the micro examples that you just highlighted, and then on across the board. And so passing it over to Mr. Noah here, I'm just gonna leave you with a question mark. We've said a lot. I know you got a lot to say. And so I'm curious if you have any comments or or thoughts you want to share based upon this conversation where we're at.
I definitely do. I must say, Tianna, like what you just said about seeing the whole countenance and the eyes of elders like light up when they see this, like the same or similar food being grown that they grew up with, like to me that, yeah, to me like that just really strikes a chord like in my own heart. And I'm up here in Massachusetts. I do like a lot of, I do a different sort of reclamation work with my partner's tribal community. But I just have always, yeah, that's just always stuck with me. Like if I'm off in a tangent because I'm like, if I got to have my farm in the South, I would literally just be asking elders like all the time, like, you know, what did you know, what kind of mustard green did you grow up eating? Oh, it's hen pecked. You know, I've heard that one, like me. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna grow it for you and then give it out. And then we could just talk. So like that just really, yeah, that really like, to me, it like deepens like my own spirit and understanding my own role of like, I'm like plugging myself into an existing tradition and legacy. Like as Blain was speaking to, I'm plugging myself into this stream that I like to call it Black Agrarianism, that is basically tied to like global peasant farming, like global agroecological farming, like global traditional farming and indigenous farming. And like, I kind of want to talk a little about the unlearning piece a tiny bit, just because I think the biggest thing for me is like unlearning control and the desire to control, like in that, not just like in the way that I relate to the land, but also in the way that I relate to like the plants and the animals that I tend, and to the people that like live off of the land that I'm taking care of. Like I am constantly faced with having to like, I'm constantly facing my own desire for control over those processes and things. And I feel like I really see that tied to like the matrix that is plantation agriculture and like productive agriculture that is extracting and yeah, basically like jeopardizing the existence of like ourselves and all of our like sibling species on the earth. I think, yeah, and I really just hope to continue to go through that process of unlearning control and learning to like live with rather than over.
Thank you, Noah. Yeah, that's really important and not often, I think, talked about. And it's exceptionally challenging to maintain those values when you are a production farmer or running a small food business. Is finding that fine line, that balance between the world as it is and then the ancestry and the values that are couched within it. Just want to do a little time check. We're about 7 minutes before the hour. And no, I think we were slated to go till 8. Is that right? Or was it later?
We're slated to go till 8:30.
Oh, perfect. Oh man. Oh, so we in the mix. Okay then. All right. Well, I'm usually not a one-way talker and panel moderator kind of person. So I dropped a line in the chat. If anyone has any questions or comments that you'd like to share, please share them up. And Miss Alcy, thank you for blessing us with one. And Noah, if you don't mind, if I depart from the prompts a bit and jump to this question, do I have your permission, sir?
You don't need my permission. It's all you.
Okay, so right. So what are some of the medicines the land has offered to each of you all? And if I can ride that just a little bit, Miss Alcy, medicine could be both plant medicine, could also be spiritual medicine, could be cultural medicine. And so we'll switch up the flow here a little bit and start with Miss Tianna and then Miss Earcine and Noah. I'm sorry if I caught you off guard, Tianna, if you were expecting Miss Earcine to go first, but I saw you pondering that great mind of yours. So I was like, oh, let me just choose her.
So much medicine in the land, so much healing. Let me try to focus on one. Let me see. I would say my dose of medicine that I get out there every time I'm out there is just this renewal. I go out there and it's like I'm being like revived. Like I feel also too, if I spend my whole day in office and just that fluorescent lighting all day and you're stuck inside all day, you go out there and it's like instant relief, instant just joy. And so I've also found that the animals of the land, they will visit me, they'll greet me. And so even the animals and the insects, they're like my medicine. They're like giving me so much that I don't even know that I need. I'll just be working the field or something, and I just see this huge like shadow, and then I look up and it's just this giant bird, just like talking to me, greeting me, blessing me. And I feel like it's like those visits are also not just like, hey, Tianna, it's also like a thank you, Tianna. We're with you, Tianna. We're supporting you. It's like this like reassurance. And so I guess I'm getting like beyond like the whole medicine question, because now I'm just speaking of how the land itself heals me. It's just this one, it's just my medicine. And it's in a whole, the land is medicine. So yeah, that's what I'll share on that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Miss Earcine?
Tianna, that was so beautiful, because it's exactly how I feel. All while she was talking, I was like, ditto, ditto, ditto. For me too, I have to speak on the ancestors, because my grandparents raised me on this land, and every single day I can feel their presence. Every time I go out, I have to always thank them, sometimes in tears. Thank you for leaving this for me, for making sure that I had a place to come back to when I had no place to go except to come home. Because I know for me, if I had not came home, I don't even believe I would be alive. I really don't. So coming here, literally, it saved my life. Spiritually, for me, it brought me into such a sense of spirituality that I would have never, ever felt any place else on this earth except the place that I grew up. And I'm like Tianna, the birds, the insects, it seems like they're always blessing you. The eagles fly over, in the fall this year, I looked up and all these beautiful big black birds was, flying over the land, and everything that happens here on this land is pure magic. It's so mystical, and it's very mystical. It just, really, really mystical to be on the land, and you can't explain really how you feel. I don't think there's a word for how I feel, how Tianna just described it. I don't think even the way she described it is how she totally feel, because you can't explain that to anyone. So we can give you a glimpse of how we feel, but I don't think there's words for it. I think to encourage people to experience it would be the best thing. It's like, you have to experience this to know what I'm talking about. I just love being here. And I'm grateful to be here on this land.
I'm just grateful that you're here on this earth, Ms. Earcine. And same for you, Mr. Noah and Ms. Tianna and everyone else. And for me, I've always tried my best to listen to the wind. I feel like the wind often communicates to us beyond just the passing of air over our hair or over our face. There's always little messages encoded into it that's very hard to put into words, but it's something that you feel, particularly when you're out there working the land, or well, I don't know if anyone, I'm sure everyone's experienced after working like a long hot day in the middle of July, and you get that breeze right at like 3:40 before the rain clouds come in. You're like, okay, I've made it another day. You know. So I'll pass it over to you, Noah.
Thank you. Yeah, I must say, I've been to Miss Earcine's place, and and I took some naps and I slept there, and it just, it was no joke. You just want to, I have not felt such a deep rest in my whole life. I mean, it's just, yeah. To be honest, I was kind of, I won't answer the question a little different, because I get medicine from like working the land and medicine from the land, and I'll talk a little bit about both. And I think like working with the land, the biggest medicine for me is like, it is completely humbled. Like, it completely humbles me. Yeah, I don't know what it is. If it just feels like something that was put inside me by like the wider society, but I have a very yeah, I feel overly ambitious or obsessed with like I was saying earlier, like control. And working the land just like completely just throws all that away. And I think another big medicine is like, it has caused me to completely working with the land has completely caused me to to look at my ancestors in a completely new way, to know that, and to feel like, wow, this is like, they were doing something similar to what I was doing for generation after generation and after generation. And I feel an ounce of the physical struggle and physical pain, and also the ingenuity and creativity and intelligence that it took for them to be out there. Like, it just all floods back into my body, and it's like flipping the world upside down. Like, I just see farmers as the most, and land workers like the most sacred people at this point. It really touches me. And I think yeah, that's all a gift that the land gives me as medicine, is that, yeah, I feel like I have a place to really understand who I am, like in a very soulful way.
Thank you, Noah. I remember when I first started getting into agriculture, I was just so excited. You know, I just couldn't believe that people will have the opportunity to just work outside. You know, all in society pushes us to work indoors, and lo and behold, here's, you know, this profession that allows you to be outside. And that, as I got through it, I had experiences very similar to what you just described, Noah, and I'm still having them. It's not a static moment, it's a lifelong process. And as the years went on and I was a production farmer, I began to realize that, oh my God, this is hard work. In fact, actually, there ain't nothing easy about it. You actually gotta be kind of insane to want to do this kind of work. As you know, so, you know, we're kind of like the crazies of the crazies, if you will, in the most loving, sort of ingenious kind of way. And so with that, I'd be curious to know, what are some real challenges that you all are facing in your projects and the work you're doing currently, or challenges that you see, you know, down the line that you know that you might encounter? Because one thing that is true, that I've come to find true across the board, is that one challenge that one farmer has is actually a challenge that we all have. And so the challenges that you all could share might be ones that, for folks on the call, are either experiencing or have yet to experience, but might get a glimpse into what could be coming for them. So I'll start with you, Ms. Earcine, if you want to tackle that one.
Oh, happy to share that one. I moved here when I was in my 50s, right? And now I'm 71, going on 72. My challenge is like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. It's getting too hard. You know, passing it on, training other young people, you know, working with my grandson, you know, my prayers for at least 2 of my grandsons, I feel is going to join me in my work. But realizing that I really need to pass it on. Quit thinking that I can still do things I did 20 years ago, right? You know, and learn to train and to teach, and to pass on what I know, to pass my wisdom and knowledge on, and to work with younger farmers. For me, that's my biggest challenge now, is to surrender to, I can't do some things that I used to physically on the farm.
So can you give us an example, like an acute example or two?
Like those 5 and 6 hours I used to spend outside working, tilling the gardens. You know, I find that in the summer months, I used to be able to work in the heat more, but the more mature I get, I find that I have to, if it's getting near 12 o'clock, I need to be in the house. I even, you know, I'm learning to get up earlier and work like the early morning, like I can get out there at 6 and work to about 10. But if I'm out beyond that, it's in the summer, it gets too hot for me, that I have to come in, you know, and rest more. But just learning that it's time for me to move into teaching and more writing and more training, you know, that's an example for me that, you know, that I'm challenged with.
Thank you. Tianna?
All right, I'll speak on 2 challenges I've been facing. One is hands. It's hard to get hands that want to stay. Like you said, Blain, this is like hard work, and it's hard to find people that want to get into this work. And so for me, it's been a lot of like solo work. I've been having some help here and there, but it's hard to find people who like want to stay on the team and want to farm and want to do this, you know, There's people who might just want to help out because they know I need help and I'm grateful for them. But as far as like recruiting, new farmers, it's really hard to get these people, wanting to be committed. And so I also feel like I'm not making enough efforts to try to recruit people. So maybe I just need to be putting in more efforts. What was my other one I was going to speak on? I forgot. So yeah, that's my main challenge right now. It's just finding a team of hands that want to stay on my team and work the field with me.
No, I know every farmer on this call is probably shaking their head. That is the perpetual challenge. The perpetual challenge. If not now, then it was before. The society is trending towards a majority service society with roughly 84% of the US population living in and around cities. For every 1,000 children that are born in a rural area, it's something ridiculous like 10 stay behind. So the question becomes, where are the farmers of the future going to come from? And in large part, they're going to come from cities and from urban areas, from previous careers or different industries other than agriculture. And the hands is going to continue to be a continual challenge. And Noah, you want to share anything on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll just riff straight off what both of y'all just shared. Because I think it's a huge challenge. Is like, for me, it's just feeling like a general isolation. Like, okay, I'm the, for lack of a better term, like the out of my mind one who's like out working like in the heat or, I don't know, freezing cold or in the rain. And it's like, there's just not a lot of folk who are going to go out there and do it with you. And it's very difficult, to find those people. And I just reflect back on like what my own understanding of like our, not only just like what our history, like the history of Black farming and how collective and communal and community based that it is and was. I think about that, and I think about that collective tradition like still continuing throughout the world, and that we're actually in like a very, for lack of a better term, like regressive like place that's like we're like on the edge, like way out there, like feeling this isolation. I'm thinking like, man, like I really wish that I was part of like a cohesive community of people when we were out doing this together. Or like I oftentimes joke with people, I'm like, man, I wish I lived in a village. Like I always be saying that kind of stuff. Just because it's like, and it's not just getting the hands, right? It's like it can turn a little bit into like a psychological isolation sometimes. So I think that's a big challenge. And then I think also just like specifically up here, because a lot of my experience has been up here in Massachusetts, like is like finding land and in a healthy situation of accessing the land. Like, well, there might be land available, right? So here and here and here, but is this like a healthy situation for me to go into, given like all of this, like that, like my whole being is invested in like what I do on the land. Like, this is a healthy situation for me. That's been extremely challenging to try and figure out and navigate. yeah, and that's just always, I just think always will be a challenge.
Yeah, most definitely. There's that P word always shows up, power. The way in which power dynamics play, who owns the land, quote unquote owns, who controls the access to that land or to the means of production. All those things are going to become increasingly more challenging, more so than they are now, due to the natural trend of land ownership in this country and how property rights are being sort of situated within the state in today's context. And so with that, as we sort of approach 15 till the end of our time together here, I would love to just hear more about y'all's vision for the future, even as beyond just your individual farm project and the work you're currently immersed in, because she's talking, the land is talking, and we have a tremendous opportunity to listen deeply. And not only is she talking, she's crying in certain cases, and we're crying in certain cases as well. So I just would love to hear, and we'll start with you, Noah, on this one. Love to hear some of your visions, your thoughts for the road ahead.
Wow, yeah. Thank you. What immediately popped up for me was something that Miss Earcine said earlier, which was when she was speaking about returning to her grandfather's land after it not being tended for I believe you said about 15 years. And you said that the land needs people on it. Like, yeah, to take care of the land, to belong to the land. And I really, like, if I was to like succinctly state what my vision is, it's just that I see so much, I think they're like connected. I see so much loneliness and grief like in the land itself, like it just looks lonely. All these abandoned houses and abandoned barns and abandoned outbuildings and abandoned driveways, abandoned gardens. And it's like, and even in young forests, when I be walking around, like it just feels like the land's crying out, like to be in relationship with humans, with us. And it kind of goes really against the whole like wilderness ideology thing about like, well, we just need to let the land alone. Like, I don't really subscribe to that. And I think to me, it's like what's causing that loneliness and disconnect and the dispossession of people from the land is like it's basically just economic extraction from the land, and it's the plantation agricultural system, and it's like the cultural progression of our whole it's not the entire globe, actually. It's just like a small subset of the developed world is like moving just away from being with the land in that way. And so my vision is like a reversal of that here, and a revival, and not just a revival within Black agrarian communities in the South and in the United States and across the diaspora, but like a revival of that relationship for Indigenous communities, for Native community in North America and the world. And I think that, I actually think that our futures are tied together inextricably. And yeah, so that's part of my vision, is like of bringing that together as well. So
Thank you, Noah. Miss Tianna?
My vision includes the education and empowerment of aspiring farmers. I feel like a lot of people aren't really interested in this work because they don't see it as like a feasible source of income. It can't be profitable. It can't be, we always are just drawn to look at how productive something is. And if they don't see it as like a productive career, there's like an immediate like rejection. And so in me trying to figure out how do I like get people into this, I'm like, I have to show them it's productive. So that right now I'm trying to figure out how to like make it productive. Right now it's productive for me because I'm able to like produce the things that I want to and get it into the communities. But as far as like profitable, yeah. And that's what people are gonna like want to see. So I'm like, okay, how do I make a business that's respectful of the land and doesn't degrade the land and natural resources, but also is sustainable economically? And so that's what I want to be able to show people, is that you can do this and make a living. Like you can live off of the land and be comfortable. And so that's a struggle, but that's a dream of mine. And I want to do that so that I can encourage people into this work. And I want to train and I want to teach and I want people to get committed to it and fall in love with it like I have and feed the community. There's not enough farmers feeding the communities. And it puts a lot of weight on the farmers who are feeding the communities. We can only produce so much. But so I want to just empower and uplift more farmers into this work and more growers. And I also aspire to have a more sustainable and food system. There's so many communities that need that focus. So I'm trying to focus on like one community at a time. But I would just like to see greater access to local food and organic food. And so right now for me, it's like very micro, like, okay, I'm going to produce and I'm going to sell to the community, but I also want to see it larger. I want it to be the norm that we have local fresh food available to us, and for consumers to demand that over the fast food and the family dollar food that's so readily available to them. I want them to know that they can have access and that there's farmers in the community growing food for them. So my dream is for a just food system and more farmers.
Ashe. Ashe to that one. Miss Earcine?
I truly believe that everything we're talking about is a consciousness. And so my dream would be for people to see nature as true wealth. Because you never see anything lacking in nature. If you see an apple, how many seeds? One apple, you can get probably 10 apple trees out of one apple, right? So if we can look at nature as true wealth, it's always plentiful, it's always there. I've been here for 16 years and every year, more wildflowers, more wild herbs, more, it's just more of everything every year. So nature is very plentiful. If we can show that to humanity, the collective consciousness that if you are accountable to nature bookkeeping and you really take care of it, you are already wealthy. Nature is going to take care of you. So for me, it's the collective consciousness of us opening people up to that we're already wealthy. The wealth is there. So how do we take that wealth from nature and present it to humanity? For me, I believe that's the key, because nature is wealthy and nature is wealth. That's our health and that's our wealth. That's our true health, that's our true wealth. So showing that to humanity so they can see that. And people eat every day. I always tell people that. How can you say there's no money in food? When we all eat every single day, we eat. So it has to be the consciousness of where you're buying your food from. You vote with your dollar, right? It has to be the consciousness of how you think about food, how you think about nature. And I believe that has to get into people's consciousness and into their heart. And once that reaches their heart, because I observe the people in my community. Sometimes they'll come over and they'll purchase something and they'll say, oh, I didn't know what, like my skincare product, it would cost that much. But when I really explain to them, you know, what it takes to do that, they get an understanding of that. But what really helps is when they use it. And that consciousness in that product make them realize that, wow, you know, this is something I really need. It made me feel better. So I believe getting into the collective consciousness of people, and when they use your food or eat what you have or anything that you do, that we do, and we get enough of that out there into them, that's what's going to help people to realize and see that this is the best thing, you know, for them. But more than anything is that nature is very wealthy. And so if we look at it from that point of view, but that's Earcine 101 on that one, okay? But I truly believe that.
Thank you. I felt my mind explode when you said nature is true wealth. I never really heard it framed like that in that way. And yeah, if my afro could go out, it would have just exploded. And I wish we were all in person so we could just give these folks a round of applause and hugs and love on them. And yeah, this has been awesome. There's a chef, a Gullah Geechee chef named, I believe his first name is Dale, but I know him as Chef Green. And I used to spend some time with him when I would travel down to that part of Georgia, South Carolina. And he would always say that the task at hand is to live off the fat of the land. And I just want to say thank you to the three of you, because you all have given us just pieces of that fat, of that yummy, rich essence of what we're all trying to do and are doing. And this is just the first of a two-part series, but also a part of the story and journey of SAAFON. And we have some other folks from SAAFON here on the call. I just want to give them a shout out. The one and only Miss Alcy Parks. I know, right? Hey. And Mama Whitney J. And it was just so great, and I miss a lot. And our beloved ED, Mr. Jahi Chappelle. Give a shout out to Mr. Jahi. Actually, I haven't seen you in a while, Jahi, and I noticed that you got a fresh shave there, sir. Looking sharp, young man. You're looking sharp. And to give a shout out to Shakira Tyler. She's been a part of the SAAFON family from a long time back, during the days with Miss Cynthia and so on and so forth. And thank you, Noah. Just want to give a warm thank you to Noah in particular for driving this land report, which is a beautiful report. I hope everyone's had an opportunity to look that joint over. That's just the start of a conversation. I'm sure he has many more reports to produce. Brilliant young parent to be. And then of course, Miss Tianna and Miss Earcine. Tianna, is my first time meeting you. I hope to get to meet you in person. And as I'm sure everyone might tell you, I got some hands for you. So next time I'm visiting my family down in Stone Mountain, I'll come check you out. And Miss Earcine, I know I owe you another visit. I think the last time I saw you was just before the pandemic, when we had an encounter out there with Alcy and a few other folks, with Shakira. And tell your husband I said hello. And Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us this evening, for listening, for plugging in. And I don't know if Noah, if you have any housekeeping or closing comments that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I wanted to, thanks for closing us out, Blaine. I just wanted to say there is a part 2 in the Legacy Talk. Believe it's next Monday, December 13th. You can register, find a registration link on SAAFON social media, Instagram and Facebook. But that's it.
Beautiful. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great evening. Peace.